I know that gets you into triple negatives, and I'm sorry. I mean, if in fact you're arguing, as I understand it, it's very important for us to have people who are willing to oppose the president, in this case, in the example you just gave. So by not offering the alternative views, you've laid out a variety of advantages that you argue in here when we have an opposition. So if you don't oppose, are you being disloyal?
Well, essentially, loyal opposition serves as a mean to encourage deliberation. It offers, and as mentioned earlier, we want to avoid de Tocqueville's tyranny of the majority. And inherently in democracy, that tyranny will arise unless the minority's alternative policies or solutions or even viewpoints are represented. So opposition serves as a mean to get every voice represented. So it's like an indirect representation in a sense. So it is essential to the functioning of democracy in that way.
I think
it's a case-by-case basis. When we look at something, if it is in their firm belief that this is against the best interests of government in our country, and if the president is expanding his power too far, then yes, they should oppose, and that's a very loyal thing to do. But if it is their firm belief in that situation that perhaps President Bush needed to take those far steps for national security, then they did the right thing in being loyal to him.
So you classify the filibuster as obstructionism. Should we apply the same principle case by case to filibusters? Or is it, in fact, always a case of obstructionism?
Well, like any power, it can be abused. There are instances where obstructionism can be constructive, or it can just simply be obstructionist in a way, and delay progress, slow it, or obstruct it entirely. We see an example where a representative had wanted an up or down vote, and he simply wanted the up or down vote, and after every speaker, he motioned to adjourn, just so he can get that vote. Now, in this way, it was a legitimate issue that deserved legitimate deliberation and a legitimate vote.
The framers did not provide for the existence of political parties in the Constitution, but what evidence in the Constitution itself do you see for the framers' understanding of the importance of a loyal opposition?
I think the fact that the Constitution was very much based on consent of the governed and popular sovereignty, the idea that the people are the sovereigns and the ultimate power. The founders saw that beyond it just being a tyranny majority for the ultimate power, we also had to hear those other voices which might not necessarily agree with the majority. And that is really kind of a bulwark of the loyal opposition, and that's kind of how they worked it in. And they realized that the key to the country's stability and happiness would be a cooperation and the realization that there are other views, and that the best part of democracy is compromise, and that all ideas don't necessarily come from one specific place.
So what is going on right now in terms of gridlock in Congress?
Well, we see this, if we detach ourselves from the situation, we see this vicious circle in Washington of politics. We see this party polarization, which causes gridlock, and we get discontent in the public and public mistrust, and then the party that is out of power becomes identifiable with the public because they also revile the party that is in power, so they almost take advantage of this lack of delay in order to propose their ideas and their solutions.
I think that right now we have an extremely contentious feel around the legislature. For example, right after the health care bill passed, Senator John McCain stated that the Democrats can no longer expect any cooperation for the rest of the year from the Republicans. He stated that they had poisoned the well with their tactics of passing the health care bill, and I think that sort of feeling is really preventing any sort of bipartisan cooperation. People are really complaining that the health care bill was not a bipartisan effort, but how can we expect bipartisan cooperation when we have people stating that the majority party has poisoned the well, or the minority party even poisoning the well?
Well, why are we worried about that? We don't have divided government now. We have Democratic majorities in both the House, Senate, and the White House.
But we need to prevent the tyranny of the majority. I think that's the most important thing about a loyal opposition, is that Alexis de Tocqueville stated that the greatest thing in America is that we have this compromise and we don't really have this tyranny of the majority. But it's a danger when you have a democracy like ours. I think that we do have a united Congress and a united president under the same party, but that doesn't mean that the minority party's views are irrelevant. They're very relevant, and I think to get the depolarization that we really need people to start reaching across party lines, and I don't think that's happening right now.
We definitely see a problem with also judicial nominations, and that's a place where we're getting obstructionism rather than a situation where we're seeing anybody working together, as we've seen Senator Richard Shelby place a blanket hold over 70 of President Obama's judicial nominations. And we also have, 34 judicial nominations of President Obama who were waiting for more than 6 months before their vote had, even gone to the Senate.
How do you determine then when loyal opposition becomes obstructionism?
I think that when they're actually delaying or preventing entirely the passage of legislation or the appointment of a judicial appointment, or the confirmation of a judicial appointment, I think that that's when it becomes obstructionism, because the loyal opposition remains loyal to the government and acts with patriotism, whereas obstructionism just tries to prevent anything from getting done. The loyal opposition wants things to get done, they just want it to be done differently, and their presentation of alternative solutions is what makes them so essential to a democracy.
So how would you then characterize the minority party's actions under the current situation? Loyal opposition or obstructionism based upon what you just defined?
I definitely think we have more of an obstructionist minority party right now, because of just the fact that we do have they're not willing to compromise at all. They just keep saying no, no, no. Even when the Democrats said, okay, we'll try to include some of your ideas, they still said no. And that really polarized the party. And Evan Bayh, Senator Evan Bayh, then went ahead and said, I'm not going to run again just because of how polarized these parties have become.
I agree with Lyle. We see recently with the healthcare bill that just passed. Earlier, the Obama administration had approached ranking minority member Chuck Grassley and suggested working on a bipartisan effort. Now, when the Republicans back at home realized this, they threatened to run a primary against the senator, and Chuck Grassley, who had originally said he wanted a bipartisan effort, later comes out and says that this Obamacare may pull the plug on grandma. So we definitely see this as obstructionist rather than opposition, loyal opposition that would be progressive.